Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for being here. It's me, Ari Dasset Rashid. I'm your anthropologist and sociologist. Hit the like button, share this live stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Become a member of the channel and don't forget, donate in the links below. Thank you very much. And check my novels on Amazon. Thank you. All right. Before I start with the teaching of the day, how are you all doing today? Let me know. How are you all doing today? It's early in the morning now for me, 7:07 a.m. And I was praying and fasting, and I thought, hey, let me do a live stream to address a few things. So, in this um, live stream, I want to highlight a huge, a big elephant in the room. Elephant in the room is a saying in English that refers to an uncomfortable topic people don't want to talk about. But it's an uncomfortable topic that's okay. Let me say it like this: if you would go to to an office building and there's a giant elephant inside the office building, you're gonna think, what the heck is this? This is quite dangerous. This elephant shouldn't be in this building. This elephant can get uncomfortable, go wild, and people get hurt or people die. So a literal elephant in a room is very unlikely to happen. But hey, if you would enter a building and you see this giant elephant there, first of all, you can barely walk around because it takes off a lot of space, that elephant over there. Secondly, it'd be quite scary because if the elephant gets uncomfortable, people will get injured or people will even die. And how the heck can you even function in that building, whatever you're there to do, with this giant elephant over there? But okay, an elephant in a room is symbolic for a current or sometimes a past scandal that people really don't want to admit, let alone talk about. All right? Now, let me give you um, one example of a historical elephant in the room relating to the Netherlands. I grew up in the Netherlands. I'm not born in the Netherlands. I'm born on Curacao, which is part of the Dutch administration, but it's not the Netherlands itself. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is the Dutch administration of which Curacao is part of. So I have the Dutch nationality, but I'm not born in the Netherlands. I'm born in Curacao. I grew up in the Netherlands, in the cities Rotterdam and Schiedam. And me growing up in the Netherlands, because of that, my Dutch is fluent, like as if it's my native language. My native languages are Papiamento and uh, Dutch. I also picked up a lot of things from the Dutch culture here, or whatever you call it, Dutch culture. I also picked up a lot of things about Dutch history because since I was a teenager, I was so into history. By the way, in high school, history was the best. I had the best grades for history in high school. So yeah, I always went further in history. Okay, I got a good grade for the history test. But you know what? Let me do research myself. Always loved doing that. Watching documentaries, reading books, reading papers, and with the arrival of YouTube, man, people would make conspiracy videos. I loved watching those, though I didn't agree with most of them because a lot of them were far fetched. But anyway, about the Netherlands, there's one elephant in the room that people don't even try to address this in public, especially not with your friends and family if you're in the Netherlands. And it's about the Second World War. As you all know, Nazi Germany occupied the Netherlands. They bombed Rotterdam and took over the Netherlands. And there were resistance there was a resistance in the Netherlands fighting the Nazi occupation. And I don't have to explain to you what the Nazi occupation did with with a specific type, with a specific category of people. You all know what I'm talking about. And eventually, you had the Moroccans under the flag of France, because Morocco was a protectorate of France at the time, fighting to get rid of the Nazi occupation. You also had the Americans, Canadians intervening, and the Netherlands was liberated from, oh, were free, better said, from Nazi Germany, and life continued. And now, decades later, the many Dutch people you encounter. I'm not talking about immigrants. I'm talking about actual native Dutch people, indigenous Dutch people. They have stories of how their great grandfather or grandpa, if he's still alive, was part of the resistance. And you even have movies about the Dutch resistance against the Nazi occupation. So now there's this image out there that the Netherlands was a country that was in complete resistance against Nazi occupation. But hold on a minute. If the resistance was really so big and so widespread, how come the occupation happened so easily? How come it lasted for so long? And how come the police stations were not prosecuted afterwards for collaborating with the Nazi regime so smoothly? When you look at the historical facts of what actually happened, the whole image of the Netherlands being this resistance nation against Nazi occupation it, it's simply not true. But for some reason, now after the Second World War is over, almost everyone who lived back then was at the right side. Are you kidding me? But anyway, I just want to point this out to you. That's one elephant in the room right over there. And this may explain why the Netherlands has this very chronicle pro Israel stance. Even when, for example, right now, the state of Israel is violating international law, including they're involved in the genocide on the Palestinians. But for some reason in the Netherlands, people don't want to address the crimes of the state of Israel. Why? They have to look into history. Aha, there is some guilt, collective guilt haunting the country. And because there's something about their ancestors that they don't want to admit, that it makes them feel embarrassed and makes them lose their good standing worldwide. That's why, to make themselves look good, they have this full support for the descendants of the victims of their ancestors. However, they don't do this to all the descendants of the ancestors' victims. Oh, and look at it. The full support they have for the state of Israel isn't convenient that a lot of people in the state of Israel, not all of them, are categorized as quote unquote white or European. So hold on a minute. The Netherlands, in historically speaking, did a lot of dirt worldwide. So how come there's no almost unconditional loyalty for Indonesia or for, say, the black community? So even in this full support for the state of Israel has a pathological origins with it. Because those people kind of look like them and their ancestors did them dirty. Now they with the sin of those ancestors feel horrible. And because they want to admit this dirt of their ancestors, they want to cover it up. And the way they cover it up is having this full unconditional support. Because if you call out this full unconditional support, they would have to admit things they don't want to admit. Because think about it. The international court is here in The Hague, in the Netherlands. A country that claims to be for international law and human rights. How come they keep supporting another country that violates international law and human rights on a regular basis? So that's a huge inconsistency right over there. And this is what I'm teaching you. When you see a full inconsistency into your face like that, there's always something that's being hidden behind it. Is this all clear to you? I just use the Netherlands as a case study over here. And people who know me know that Rashid, when Rashid sees something that's dangerous, he doesn't sugarcoat it. I can sugarcoat things as long as there's no danger involved. But the moment danger, especially danger human lives, are involved, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. The Netherlands, who claims to be all about human rights, international law, and all that, supporting a country that violates human rights and international law continuously. Big inconsistency. So, what's behind this support for this other country that violates international law and human rights continuously? There's some historical scandal they don't want to deal with. Now, enough about the Netherlands and the Second World War. Let's go closer now. The year 2020. We are nearing the end of the year 2024, according to the Gregorian calendar. In the year 2024, 2020, in the year 2020, 2020, a huge crash happened worldwide. I don't have to go into details of what happened. And that crisis lasted for 3 years, at least. Something like 3.5 years it lasted. Now, you all know which crisis I'm talking about. Question is, it's less than 2 years ago that the crisis was deemed over. And it's less than 5 years ago that the crisis began. How come nobody, almost nobody, is talking about what happened? That's weird. If a homicide happens in a neighborhood, people will not be talking about it every day for years to come, but it will be in the collective consciousness. If, for example, in the early 2000s, there was this, I believe it was 2006, okay. But anyway, there was this, no, it's the late 2000s, I mean, there was this giant flood that happened in the Indian Ocean, causing, I believe, over 200,000 people to die. I may be wrong about the amount, but there were a lot of people died because of it. All in Africa, people died, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. Are people talking about that disaster till this day every day? No. Nevertheless, it's something that people will admit it happened. But they moved on. During the Second World War, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Well, the place where they dropped those bombs are full. People, you won't even recognize that there was any bomb dropped over there because it's so many years ago and people moved on. But people do remember that their nation was victimized because of it. Their money was about it over there. You know where I'm going with this? If something bad happens locally in a village or a town, like a homicide or whatever, people will remember it. And the memory of it alone will force people to admit it and talk about it. If something happens nationwide, Lord have mercy, there'll be legislation based to prevent it from happening again. There'll be activists discussing it. That's how it goes. But just think about it. You have an enormous crisis that happened in our lifetime less than 5 years ago. This crisis led to an increase in domestic violence. It led to families falling apart. It led to institutional breakdowns. It led to violation of human rights, even by many governments who claim to be for human rights. They abused a lot of measures. I'm not preaching conspiracy theories over, just doing on research. People turned on one another. But guess what? Just let me say, it's just one, almost 1.5 years after it's over. People act like this crisis is decades ago, or some people act like the crisis never even happened. There are more people talking about the Second World War. There are more people talking about the Vietnam War. There are more people talking about the fall of Soviet Union. There are more people today who weren't even alive back then who are talking about past events that are even beyond, even long before they were born. Then there are people talking about what happened in the past 5 years. And let me tell you one thing. I'm an anthropologist, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it with you. When something traumatic happens collectively, and it's not that long ago that it happened, it's less than 10 years ago, and a population is not even talking about it, it can only mean one thing. That means that whatever trauma it was that happened in the community, a big portion of the people were in on it. And now that the situation is over, their culpability and their compliance will show, it will make them look bad, it will backfire on them. And here's the thing, they can't go back in time and fix it and undo it. So they have to live with the fact that they failed collectively. Now, if they would just admit they failed collectively, then I have a dedication to improve, problem solved. But this thing with older people, they don't want to admit they failed, especially when they failed collectively. It's already hard enough for a human being to admit that they individually failed, let alone when collectively people fail. For example, let me just give an example to you. Let's say now that I'm just using a comic. So let's say there was this um, school shooting somewhere in the United States. Two teenagers picked up guns, went to the high school, went to shoot people. They killed a lot of people and then they turned and killed themselves. Big drama. There was a documentary about it, one or two. Everyone is talking about, oh, those teenagers were monsters, look what they've done, killing all the teachers, fellow students, blah, blah, blah. But then out of the blue, everything goes silent about the topic. Nobody wants to ever talk about that school shooting anymore. Nobody. And you think to yourself, okay, this was a very big event that happened. This was a national trauma on the United States. Some of you may know which school shooting I'm talking about over here. was one of the main school shootings that got a lot of attention. And ever since, many more school shootings happened. But about that one specific school shooting, facts came out that made the whole public look suspicious. It came out that those two teenagers were bullied and abused. They were the scapegoat. They were the emotional trash can of the school, and even the teachers were in on it. They didn't intervene. They just let it happen for years. So there was structural violence, structural victimization against those two teenagers for years, and everyone knew what was going on, but nobody intervened. There was one there was one pupil at that school that was kind towards two teenagers, and they told him, "Don't come to school tomorrow." And then the shooting happened. Now, do I approve of those two victims turning into victimizers and doing this mass killing and they kill themselves? No. On the other hand, I cannot treat them like, oh, those were two monsters. Oh my God. Like the whole the rest of the community were just innocent souls. No, they were not. You see where I'm going with this? So that school shooting that happened in the United States that shocked the whole nation, the reason people stopped talking about it and only rarely is it referred back to is because that event itself is a big scandal of how the American public failed. You know, the failure backfires. Who knows which school shooting I'm talking about now? If you're from the United States, you may know which school shooting I'm talking about. It happened in the year 1999. But anyway, this is a common thing in fallen mankind that they act like nothing happened. They act like nothing happened, even though the injuries all over the place and the damage is everywhere. It's a pathological coping mechanism that fallen mankind has. When an individual does this, the individual will crash mentally eventually. But when a group of people do it, people can kind of, you know, keep it together a bit longer because they get support from others in doing so. But just because you get support in doing something doesn't mean it's something good or recommendable. Look, when you notice an inconsistency in the here and now, and an inconsistency is something everyone clearly see, you have to start asking yourself what's behind this inconsistency. Because one thing I want you to understand here, that code of silence of not addressing the scandal, it's a demonic pact that the public agreed upon. Repeat it that one more time. Whenever the public failed or the public went rogue, and now they don't want to admit a scandal. Because once you admit a scandal, you need to acknowledge the scandal too. And by acknowledging the scandal, you also acknowledge that we need to improve. We can't change the past. We can't undo the past, but we have to process it and become better humans today. Once people do that, they process the past and they become better and safe humans today. Guess what? It's resolved. Case can be closed. Now I can only refer back to the case historically and reveal how it's been resolved. But if people aren't even admitting the scandal and let alone acknowledge it, let alone become better humans today by processing the past, guess what? Even though the past is the past is still ongoing. There's no case is closed. And because the case is not closed, that means that the violence is still lingering around. If a school shooting happened, and the school shooting obviously was the result of public failure, if the public owned up to their failures and they took steps to improve themselves for to be better and safer, guess what? Problem solved, case closed. But if they didn't do this, that means the negative tension that led to that school shooting is still around. And it can be triggered anytime, and something similar will happen again. And that's what's going on with the United States of America with all the school shootings. Look, I told you before that we shouldn't go out there and just run our mouth triggering people. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you to be alert and to admit when a situation is a bad situation. I hope you all agree with me, based on facts, that the silence about 2020 and the ramification impact of 2020, that the silence about it is disturbing. So even though the actual crisis itself of 2020, which lasts till May 2023, even though that crisis itself is over now, the fact that people are not processing that uh, that past situation means that they can't improve. And if people don't improve, that means that they remain damaged. And if people remain damaged, that means the same tension that led to that crisis is still around. That means a future crisis can occur anytime of either the same or worse magnitude. And a crisis does not have to be a natural disaster or an epidemic, whatever. The crisis is how people deal with such things. Look, as a believer, you need to understand what false safety is. We know what false security is. It's a security that's not even secure. False security is when you expect something to be working out well for you, but there's no guarantee it will work out well for you. That's false security. False safety is when you think that you're safe, you think uh, danger is gone while it's not. There are only few people on YouTube who address that since 2020 things changed in the public's behavior. But for the most part, people act like, what change? What are you talking about? What crisis? Look, I'm not prophesying over here. It's not something the Lord told me. I'm just giving you a realistic prediction based on fallen mankind's collective behavior. This silence for 2020, and also the fact that people don't want to hear about 2020, I'm telling you, another crisis is in the making right now. Or as a matter of fact, the other crisis is already here. And that other crisis is the result of what 2020 exposed. Let me explain what the next crisis is that's ongoing right now. 2020 exposed that the Western world does not have it together. That's what happened. You had the fall of Afghanistan by Biden pulling back all the troops and the Taliban became armed. Yet the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which is ongoing till this day. I hope by the time you in the future when you watch the replay of this live stream will be over. Then you also had the Gaza genocide that began as retaliation against the October 7 attacks. So you have all these things ongoing, and what is the Western world doing about it? Absolutely nothing. The Western world is completely incompetent and neglectful. Isn't the Western world claiming that they're the ones that civilize the world, who establish international law, human rights, and all of that? Guess what? A post colonial state, a country that used to be a colony, South Africa, which many considered a failed state or a third world country. This quote unquote failure of a country, South Africa, stood up for human rights by suing the state of Israel, and things were ruled in South Africa's favor. Why was it a Western country that said, okay, enough now, human rights are being violated, we need to stop this? I hope you get what I'm saying here. 2020 has shown the incompetence and neglectfulness of the Western world. And also the racist fairy tale upon that people that make the West appear relevant. And a lot of people worldwide believe this white supremacist fairy tale. They did. A lot still do till this day. But 2020 made all of that unbelievable. But a lot of people don't want to give up this white supremacist fairy tale. So what's going to happen now? These people worldwide, they're in all groups and all ethnicities, all would adhere to this the white supremacist fairy tale, they're all going to psychologically decline. 2020 itself, with those lockdowns, caused people to psychologically decline. Yet people fighting over toilet paper, yet domestic violence increasing, yet all types of people broke down mentally, and all types of bad things happened. Well, let me tell you, the the end of the white supremacist fairy tale, which happened this year, you will see for the years to come. And it's a prediction. I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But you'll see for the coming years, all over the world, people declining psychologically, which will lead to much civil and social unrest in many places. It's going to be far worse than the crisis 2020. You thought people declined psychologically during the 2020 crisis? Well, guess what? The upcoming decline is going to be far worse. Oh, and the upcoming, well, at least now that I'm recording this live stream, the upcoming presidential election of the United States is a symptom of that. So again, if one crisis is not processed, that means the crisis, even though the crisis happened in the past, the situation is not resolved and it will lead to another crisis. And this all goes on over and over again. So please stay alert. Don't be paranoid. Don't be hysterical, just remain alert. We will not get away, and we mean us human species, we will not get away not processing the past and expect no bad outcome to come out of it. Look, I'm not coming to YouTube and say, guys, I see great things happening for all of us, it's going to be a bed of roses for everyone. I'm not doing that. I'm not giving false prophecies. And by the way, I'm not even prophesying in this live stream. I'm giving you a realistic prediction. Now, if things suddenly improve, that's welcome, that's great. I'm saying realistic, however. The fact alone that worldwide so many people insist on remaining silent of the 2020 crisis means that the crisis that's now unfolding, which you may don't see yet, is going to be far, far worse. So we as believers need to be ahead of that. Is this clear to you all? One thing about many believers today is that they're caught off guard when bad things happen. Look, let's say it's raining outside. Or let's say there's a hurricane rushing over Florida and it's raining very hard because of the hurricane. And someone tells you, man, I just woke up one day and it's raining so hard. Are you going to believe what they're saying? You're going to say, well, hold on a minute. Weeks before the hurricane arrived, the weather began to change. And there were news reports about the hurricane coming. Even if you didn't see the news reports, the fact the weather changed for at least 2 weeks should have warned you something's coming. And a hurricane doesn't rush over a country within just a few hours like that. A hurricane moves slowly. So for the past few days, the rain increased. How the heck you telling me that out of the blue it just began to rain so hard? You're either lying or you're just delusional. It's one of the two. And let me tell you, a lot of believers out there, they're simply lying. That divorce that they're going through right now didn't just happen out of the blue. Um, that tragedy that happened in the family, whether someone was killed by a car accident or someone suddenly got an incurable disease, whatever, it didn't just happen. Or them suddenly being fired from their job and now they're about to get homeless didn't just happen. A lot of believers are caught off guard because they are ignoring things. It's one thing when you're totally not aware of something because you couldn't be aware of it. If something happens that you couldn't be aware of, it's not your fault. You couldn't have been aware of it. You couldn't have known it. But if something bad happens and the symptoms, the building up of the negativity was visible all along, that means you just didn't want to admit there was something bad unfolding and you kept yourself in a bad situation and now it backfired on you. And the last thing often happens with believers, and it needs to stop. We cannot prevent every bad thing from happening on the earth. No, we can't do that. But what we can do is to be ahead of bad things happening. Okay. Christopher said the following. Okay. Rashid, I'm here in the United States, and I think I'll see the US becoming a third world country in my lifetime. I'm 30. I'm just seeing the tension rising. What do you think? Well, the United States is a union of states which actually function like independent countries. Some of these US states are third world countries if we weren't part of a union. because some of the US states are quite poor and backwards. Not every US state is like California or New York or the state of New York or like Texas. So the United States has third world zones in it already. It's only because the United States has a huge military presence worldwide that is still considered something relevant. But even that is declining right now. So, yes, during your lifetime, I would say within the next 5 years, you'll see a huge decline, both in the United States' reputation as in the financial situation of the United States. Maybe even faster. But again, this is an unfolding situation about the United States that Christopher just mentioned. This is an ongoing situation that was visible since the late 1990s. So only the teenagers who are alive today in the United States can say, I didn't know, I couldn't do anything about it. But all the grown folks, especially older grown, oh, not old, especially the grown folks who live longer, there's no excuse for them to not be aware of what goes on. Even though you can't stop the whole situation by yourself as an individual, you can counter it on an individual level. We as believers, we need to be ahead of all of the bad things that happen on the earth so that we have the leverage to be meaningful towards other people. It can't be that over and over again believers are caught off guard when bad things happen and all they can do is pray and hope for the better. It's time for believers, besides praying and fasting, to also be effective in daily life so that when bad things are unfolding, we have provisions to minister onto the nations. The 2020 crisis. Tell me, tell me about the leverage of believers during the 2020 crisis. There were believers with leverage during that crisis, don't get me wrong, but overall, believers worldwide had no clue that it was happening and they had nothing to counter what was going on. It shouldn't be like this. Anyway, I'm glad you all watched this live stream. I'm not a doom prophet. I'm here to show you the facts and so that you are informed and know that you need to anticipate things in a proper way. Before I close down this live stream, are there any questions about this topic or are there any remarks or things you've noticed too? Let me know in the live chat. Look, I'm not telling you that we are going to be able to stop every bad thing from happening on the earth. No, absolutely not. But we are able to be ahead about a lot of the bad things that are going to unfold on the earth, and we are able to um, block a lot of the bad things about to happen. Not all, but a lot of it. If we as believers collectively are doing the will of the Father, and we have this leverage worldwide. So, Christopher, stay calm, don't panic, don't become paranoid over there. Especially don't let the upcoming US presidential election distract you. If you vote, vote so that you can open your mouth, have something to say. Because if you don't vote, people are going to say, well, why you complain? You didn't even vote. But don't rely on your voting as if it's going to change anything. Just be prepared for the further decline of the United States. because it's inevitable. Make sure you grow in relevancy in daily life. You become economically relevant and financially dominant, and you can achieve all of this when you do the will of the Heavenly Father. You follow His guidance. It's not just for Christmas or all of you over here. There are bad times ahead. This decline of the Western world is going to become worse and worse, especially on the psychological level. It's going to get worse and worse. It's one thing for a region or country to decline financially, but it's a whole another thing when the region or country declines psychologically. So be aware, be ahead, and above all, stay in peace. Stay in a high vibration of peace all the time. You should do that anyway because we're commanded to do that by the Heavenly Father. Stay in peace by agreeing with Christ and walk by faith and overcome all that will come your way. Well, that's it for now. Keep on agreeing with Christ. Thanks for being here, and see you next live stream. Shalom.